Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks very much for coming along. We'll get started. So this is the curriculum information evening for Year 9, for your children in Year 9. As you'll know, we've not run these kind of evenings before at the school, so we've introduced them this year for the first time, and we hope they'll be really useful. Hopefully the title of the evening is self-explanatory, so it's our opportunity to give you information about what your child will be studying during Year 9 and what the journey will be like for them in all their main subjects. So after a brief introduction from myself, I'll be passing to our Deputy Head Teacher, Mr. Halls, who will be giving an overview of the curriculum and the year and some of the key dates that will be coming up for you. Then it will be Mrs. Black, who's one of our assistant heads, who will be talking about learning at the Radcliffe School. So that's how we structure lessons and what learning looks like in the classrooms, and also very importantly what home learning looks like. And then we've got representatives from the English, Maths and Science department. So we've got Miss Kalik, Mr. Franklin and Mr. Watson, who will be going through and talking in a bit more detail about those subjects. Obviously your child will be studying a wider range of subjects, but we've got a limited amount of time this evening, so we're just focusing on the core for this event. There is a lot of information, there's quite a number of slides, but I just want to assure you that all the slides and a recording of all the presentations will be on the school website from tomorrow. So don't feel you need to make lots of copious notes or take photos of the slides as we're going along. It'll all be on the website, so if there's anything you don't catch, then you'll be able to go there and have another look at it. Also in attendance this evening, we've got Miss Hunt, who, as you'll know, is the year manager for your children. So if any of you've got any questions for Miss Hunt, then she'll be available at the end as well to speak to you. So just before I pass to Miss Halls, I want to spend a few moments just reflecting on the performance of our Year 11 students who left us in the summer. So our class of 2022 who did their GCSEs and have now started their college courses. And just to say that we were really, really happy with the results that cohort of students got. There were some fantastic individual performances, students achieving extremely high grades. And overall, if you were to look at those scores, so the number of students getting 4 and above in English and Maths, 5 and above in English and Maths, and those other measures, they compare really favourably with both national averages and also with other schools in Oldham as well, if you were to look at the local league tables. And from the school's point of view, from our school's point of view, many of those measures are the best the school's ever achieved. So we were really delighted with those, and I just think it's confirmation of the high standards of education and learning that we do have at the school, and how there's the opportunity here for every child to really achieve their full potential. So on that note, I will pass to Mr. Halls to give an overview of the curriculum.
Good evening. Welcome from me. So, as Mr. Craig said, I'm Mr. Halls. I have a responsibility for the curriculum, and I'm just going to take you through a broad overview of the offer for Year 9s. So here on this slide, I'm not going to read through it, but this is a small excerpt taken from our vision statement on our website, which you can find very easily under the curriculum section. It talks about the power of knowledge and how important that is for providing our students with the very best chance of success, and about high quality education. And we do passionately believe in the power of knowledge that goes way beyond the GCSE specifications that they will begin studying towards next year. And Year 9 is an absolutely integral part of building that firm foundation of knowledge which the students need, not only to be successful at GCSE, but to provide that foundation, as I've said. Now, some very practical matters to do with the curriculum. Again, I won't take too long on this, as parents of Year 9, you're well used to how we organise things. But just as a reminder, we split students into 2 equal populations, as we call them. It's a timetabling thing, which you do not need to worry about. All you need to know is that the 2 sides, E and I, are equal. It's just that E is slightly larger in order to accommodate 11 groups rather than the 10 on the other side. Sorry, 6 rather than the 5 groups on the other side. 11 in total. All students have access to the full curriculum, that's very important, and all students follow a 2-week timetable, things that you'll be familiar with. Now, the subjects are organised into blocks. Again, this is for timetabling. The practical working of that is that if your child is in English, certain group in English, they will also be in that group for history, geography and RS. And you can see the blocks as they work for the numeracy block, the groups in science, French and music follow maths, and the practical block, that group of subjects which are up on the slide there are together. Physical education stands on its own as a separate block. Okay, so some practical things about the curriculum. Now, we have our colleagues here to take you through the core curriculum in English, Maths and Science. Obviously, it would be great to hear from all the heads of subject, but it would be a very long evening. So what we do have on our website, again, under the curriculum section, if you want to find out anything about the content of the broader curriculum, you will find it there, like I said, under the curriculum section. So just one thing particularly to mention for Year 9 is it's an important year because of the choices that are made towards the second half of the year about what is studied in Year 10 and 11. It's the first time in their education that they have an element of choice. And whilst the core curriculum remains, there are some subjects which the students can choose. Further details will follow. There's some decisions that need to be made as we review the curriculum in the next couple of months. And it is in February and March that we begin that process. Like I say, further details to follow, but it is something to begin considering and thinking about. So as you came in, there was this slide on there. I'll make sure it's back on at the end of the presentation, should you want to take a photo of the key dates for the year or make a note. So key dates for your diary are Thursday the 26th of January, 4:30 till 7 p.m. That's Year 9 Parents' Evening. Also, there's the options evening, which is on the 23rd of March. That's absolutely vitally important that you attend. That's going to get some really important information about the next stage of their education as they move to Key Stage 4 and about the choices that they need to make. And the last set of key dates are when the end of year assessments are, which will run from the 5th of June to the 16th of June. That's a 2-week period, and those will be happening in lessons during that time. When can you expect to hear from us in terms of your child's attendance, attitude to learning and engagement, and attainment? Well, they're the 3 rough times during the year: late December, early March, and late July. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to hand over to Mrs. Black, who's going to tell you a little bit about how learning happens both at home and in the classroom.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. So I'm just going to talk to you briefly about learning here at the Radcliffe School. So I'm not going to read through all of this, but the reason I've put it up on the screen to start is it's really important that we just share what underpins everything that we do. So we're passionately committed to high quality teaching and learning, which is how we deliver that ambitious curriculum. So this is what drives the decisions that I'm going to talk to you about now. So there's 10 things that we expect of all of our lessons, and these have been shared with all of our teaching staff and all of our students, and it's important that you as parents also know these things and you know what's actually happening in school. So all of these things lead to lessons that focus on learning and reduce the chance of other things getting in the way. So lessons are really well planned, carefully delivered to suit the group, so they can access the curriculum. You should expect that your child is sat in a seating plan, not in a friendship group, because it's about being a cohesive school community, learning to work together, and also focusing on learning rather than social aspects of lessons. We'll always start lessons in a really positive way with the teacher at the door to meet and greet students, but lessons should then follow a fairly standard way of starting. And we feel that's important because actually students move from subject to subject, and the more time they spend wondering what's expected of them, the less time they've got to actually focus on their learning. So we think that's really, really important. We make sure that things like uniform and equipment are in place because we don't want that to detract from the actual core purpose of that lesson, which is the learning. So we do expect students to have those key pieces of equipment with them for the lesson. So the next slide is actually up in all of our classrooms. So this is something that we share with students and it focuses on their learning. So actually it's a useful thing to share with you as parents, because if you talk to your child about their work, or you even get to see some of their work, this will help you sort of understand what's going on in those books or folders. So we ask that all our students respect their own learning and they take real pride in their work. That's very, very important to us. It means they can refer back to it, they can use it to support retrieval and revision, but it's also a really important skill to have, to take real ownership and pride in something that you're doing. So the books should be neat and tidy and of a good quality. If you see red pen in the book, that's a really good indicator that your son or daughter, your child, has had some feedback in the lesson and they've responded and they've been able to mark their work. So the red pen is something that a student's done, but it indicates there's been teacher feedback. What you won't see a lot of in the books is lots and lots of green pens. So we have a policy that's about feedback, not about marking. So you won't see endless long comments, you won't see pages and pages of ticks, because we know that they don't make much difference. What we do know makes a difference to children's learning is feedback. So what you should be looking out for is evidence that that feedback has taken place. So it might be whole class feedback, it might be coded feedback on a particular piece of work. And then the next box along, if you see that blue pen, that means that feedback has had some impact. So your child has acted on that feedback. It might be a whole lesson, or it might be redrafting a piece of work, or it might be making corrections. So we also have a strong focus on literacy in all subjects, not just English. And you may see evidence that feedback's been given either to improve literacy, or there may have even been activities focusing specifically on developing the literacy in that subject. So how you read and write in each subject. And then at the bottom of the screen, I'm going to talk a little bit more about learning at home, because actually now I've shared with you what lessons look like in school, it's really important that we get a chance just to talk about learning at home. So we've moved from being a frog school to using Satchel 1. And hopefully you've received the information that we've sent out with all the details. It's a fantastic platform. I think it will make a really big difference to all of us. It's so easy to use for students, for teachers and for parents. So there is a free app that you can download, and what that will do is it will give you notifications and information about all the home learning that your child has been set. It's free to download, and some information has been sent out already with a pin that you need to access that app. So all our home learning from this week will be set on Satchel 1. I've asked all teachers to make sure that students are given 7 days, and that was based on feedback from students. So they may have a day where there's quite a few tasks set, but they'll always have a full 7 days to complete it. I've asked subjects that they develop a good routine around the setting and collection of home learning, so students aren't trying to guess when it is. It's on that day, and I know some of the subjects will talk to you about that as part of their presentations. This is quite useful, I think, down at the bottom, just in terms of what you should be expecting. So core subjects, which are the subjects that we've got here tonight, they should be setting one home learning opportunity every 2 weeks, at least for Key Stage 3. And then other subjects, which make up the rest of the timetable, it should be at least one per half term. I would expect it to be more depending on the number of times each subject sees the students. And also a reminder that we expect students to be doing reading every day. So what do students need to do? And I have shared this information with students in an assembly. So students need to make sure now that they are logging on to Show My Homework. Their class teachers can see who's logged on, how long they were on for, have the parents logged on. You know, we can get a lot more information now about usage of this platform. They need to complete the work on time. They need to contact the teachers if they need any help, either in school or by sending an email, and keep up to date with tasks. The way the tasks appear is like a timetable, so it's really set up to help students remain organised. So there's a task list, which is like your to-do list, and you can at a glance see what's been set and when it's due. In terms of what you can do to support, because we know that home learning is different, you know, it's not like the learning that takes place in a classroom, it's asking other things of the students. Please just encourage them to check Show My Homework daily. It's on the internet, it's the normal login details. You know, offer help if you can, but where you can really help is by giving them a routine, so a place to do their home learning, and perhaps a time during the day where that's set aside to do that home learning. That's the biggest difference. And just reassure them if they're struggling that it's okay. That means the work is of the right level. If it's always easy, then it's probably not the right work. So lastly, from me, before I hand over to the subjects, we learned a lot during the period of time that we were all learning at home, and we know that there can be some huge barriers to accessing technology at home that we all faced at some point during that time. So this is a web-based system, so it does need access via a device. Home learning could be on paper, it could be digital. Your children will never be asked to print off information. That's not fair. We don't expect that of families. So if it's paper-based, we'll give them the paper. If it's web-based, that's fine. They'll have access to that. We are lucky enough to have some laptops in school. So if your son or daughter is struggling to access their work because they haven't got a suitable device, then there's some information on our website. You can fill in the form. It's not means tested, it's needs tested. So if one of our students needs to borrow a laptop, then we will be able to provide that for them. So I do encourage you, if there's any problems with access, please fill in that form on the website, and then you can come in and you can borrow a laptop for the time that you need it to enable your child to learn at home, which we know is really, really important. So I'm going to hand over now to Miss Callick, who's the head of English.
Okay, good afternoon. As Miss Black said, I'm Miss Callick, the head of English, and I'm just here to speak to you a little bit about the English curriculum at Year 9. So to understand our English curriculum, I think it's important to understand the journey that students have been on throughout Key Stage 3, because we're coming to that final stretch of Key Stage 3 here. Now, in English, we really do believe that, we should encourage our students to be literary explorers. We should open up worlds that are both similar and different to their own, and that, our students should be exposed to the cultural capital. And because of that, at Key Stage 3 in Year 7 and Year 8, our students do study lots of challenging and ambitious texts. So in Year 7 and 8, they've studied lots of the classics. However, as they're coming into Year 9, we're moving through time and we're moving into that modern era in terms of literature, and it's reflected in the content on the course. Having said that, we do start with Shakespeare's The Tempest, and one of the reasons for that is it's dictated to us by the national curriculum. We do have to study 2 Shakespeare texts at Key Stage 3, but we come at this through a different angle. So we look at it through a critical lens. So far, we believe that our students should be taught the best that has been what's considered to be the best that's been thought and said and written. But when they come into Year 9 and when they're studying Shakespeare here, we're coming at a critical angle. We're looking at the problems in that text, and there are problems in it, and we want our students to know that just because it's been written by somebody who's considered to be one of the greatest writers of all times doesn't mean that we have to agree necessarily with everything that's been said in that text. I'll just continue a little bit. So we also start to build essay writing skills here. So Year 7 and Year 8, they're building those components. We are teaching them how to analyse, how to think about the writer's intent. But as they come into Year 9, we look at putting all those different components together to prepare them for later on and for them to be able to write cohesive essays. So we then move into Term 2, and students, they experiment with different narrative structures. We teach vocabulary and explicit vocabulary, higher level vocabulary, to help them with both their writing and their reading. And they study poetry from different cultures. The final text that they will study at Key Stage 3 is actually a new text this year. It's an adaptation of Andrea Levy's Small Island. And just to give you a little bit of information about the text, it's basically based in the 1950s, or the late 1940s, early 1950s, and it's based upon the Windrush generation who emigrated from the Caribbean. Now, we've thought really hard about this text and putting it on the curriculum, and we've had lots of discussions about it. We think it's really important that our students see different voices, voices that have previously been silenced or misrepresented, represented in literature, and we think that this text does do that. I do have to say that, that there is a little bit of language in there that's quite derogatory. It's discriminatory. There's a little bit, there is some racism in there. And obviously we do think it's really important to educate our students on this. And we think that the classroom is probably the best place to have those conversations. But, you know, if you have any concerns or worries, we're more than prepared to have those conversations with you. But we want to make sure that, you know, our students are educated here. The final scheme in year 9 is, it's a writing scheme, but they end up doing presenting a speech to the rest of the class. Now, a lot of students find this really daunting, but as English teachers, I think this is the point in time where we really do feel very fortunate to be teaching the subject that we teach, because even the shyest, quietest students just transform when they're presenting on something that they feel really strongly about. And it's a real privilege to teach students at this point, because you recognise that they do have voices, and they care very deeply about the world that we live in. So, you know, again, we handle this sensitively, because we know that some students struggle with speaking and presenting, but we're prepared to have those conversations. There are 2 other elements to our curriculum. So we teach a grammar curriculum alongside this. That's once a fortnight. You know, grammar is basically the foundations of English, and we need to make sure that our students have mastered this, are accurate with this, but can also use it for effect. And that's what we focus on in year 9. We also have a library lesson once a fortnight, so that doesn't change as they move into Key Stage, into year 9. Sorry, you know, reading is just a crucial skill that all children need to have, and that we need to continue to develop. So we do dedicate 1 lesson a fortnight to that lesson. We also want our students to aspire to, we want them to read for pleasure as well. And it gives us as teachers as an opportunity to discuss the books that they're reading, to suggest things to students as well. So moving on to assessment, we do have 3 summative assessments each in year 9. So 2 of those are essay-based questions. And as I've already explained, it's really important that before they move on to Key Stage 4, they've got the foundations of that. They've started to put the different ideas together and pursue lines of inquiries, know how to write introductions and conclusions. And one of those is a narrative and descriptive writing assessment. Although there's 3 summative assessments, we do assess each lesson just to inform our future teaching, so to address any gaps in knowledge or any misconceptions, and we do that in a range of ways. So in terms of learning at home, it's very similar to year 7 and year 8. So they have 20 minutes of reading every day. They also have a spelling rule and a set of spellings every fortnight. But on top of that, you know, in year 9, it's really important that we begin to encourage students to cultivate effective study habits. So some of our homework will be to develop those study habits and to teach them how to begin revising and how to write at length as well. So finally, how you can support. So everybody here is obviously, you know, wanting to support your children. We would encourage you to encourage your children to be reading those at least those 20 minutes every day, making sure that they bring a reading book to school every day, checking that they've learned their spellings, they're testing themselves on their spellings. And I haven't written this one down, but obviously I've said that some of the subject matter that we teach in English is quite challenging, and the themes that we teach, but having those conversations with your children as well. We often find on parents, even especially in year 9, you know, the parents know so much about the curriculum because the students are really, really engaged with what they're learning. So it'd be really good if you could have those conversations. And finally, just contact us if you've got any concerns or any feedback. You can either contact myself or your child's class teacher. Thank you for listening.
All right. Yeah. Okay, so I'm Mr. Franklin. I'm in charge of Key Stage 3 at the Radcliffe School. So just going to talk you through our Year 9 curriculum. So we use the White Rose scheme, which is it's very widely used by lots and lots of schools across the country. It's used in lots of primary schools as well. So we quite often find students have covered a lot of the pre topics in primary school, which really helps us when we move into year 7, 8, and 9. So it's the idea of it is based on mastery. So they'll come across topics in year 7, and then those, rather than it just being, that topic is finished with, the topics will recur on a regular basis all the way throughout the scheme. So they're not just, they're not going to forget about some of those key skills. So currently in year 9, we're looking at straight line graphs, moving on to algebra. So you can see the kind of the sequence there. So it's about building on what we've done in previous years. It's about fluency, so becoming very, very fluent in being able to solve equations or plot graphs or whatever the topic is. But a real emphasis on problem solving. So we regularly do once every 2 weeks to do a formal pink sheet. So I'm sure students will tell you about it. Where we have lots of coloured sheets in maths. So the pink sheet is the problem solving, and it's about them getting them very used to being able to, rather than just put an answer down, to kind of spell out the steps they've taken to follow to answer the problem, and that's a really key skill that's going to be needed building up towards the eventual GCSE in years 10 and 11. So it's obviously the last year of Key Stage 3, so it's fairly key that we've got these really good building blocks to take us forward. So in terms of the assessment, so we do lots of formative assessments. So similar to other subjects, we'll do within class we use mini whiteboards a lot. So again, I'm sure your children will tell you all about it. So rather than it all being on paper, we can see when they hold the whiteboards up, we can see the students who might be struggling on a particular topic, and we can sort of explore them in more depth then. We do some green sheets, again another coloured sheet, every 2 weeks, where it gives us a chance to give them some questions based on the previous 2 weeks that they've been taught. We can see, again, we can provide feedback to the student, but we can also pick up on maybe misconceptions that people have had, things we maybe need to reteach because they've not been grasped properly by the class or by individual students. So engineering lots of opportunities for students to get feedback on how they're doing. In terms of the more formal assessments, the summative assessment, we do, as you can see from the dates, we do 5 summative assessments. We don't do one in half term 5 because the one in half term 6 is quite close to the start of the term. And again, this is useful, really useful information because we do a detailed question level analysis based on that. So for my class, for example, I would be able to see like a colour-coded status of topics that they've done well, topics that maybe they've done, reasonably well on. And then if it's coloured red, I can spot the ones, the questions that people have struggled on, maybe look at the students that have not done as well as they can do. And it just helps us to, to intervene with those students and put things in place to fix the issues that they might have. So the final assessment is, especially in year 9, it's important because it'll help us to accurately set the students ready for the GCSE years. In terms of home learning, so we've at the end of last year, we introduced a system called Sparks. It builds on what we used to use. We used to use Hegarty Maths, so it's basically got Hegarty Maths sort of at the heart of it, and then the system, the Spark system, I think is it's a lot more user friendly. There's 10,000 hours of video support, so there's lots and lots of videos to support students on every aspect of maths. You don't have to wait for teachers to set it. They can explore topics themselves, and it's kind of adapts to. So we tell her what level the class is at, and then it adapts to it. So if they're struggling on a particular topic, after a few weeks, it'll start to adjust the level. So hopefully it's challenging, but not kind of ridiculously challenging. It says, we try and do about half an hour a week. I think on a later slide it says an hour, but for Key Stage 3, I think we'll try half an hour a week. So it's set on Wednesday, during the following Wednesday, and because it emails you, it's useful if we've got the current email address as well. So in terms of how you can support, so obviously check that students are doing the homework. There's lots of, for Sparks and for the White Rose scheme, there's lots of things you can find online, lots of links you can find online because they're so widely used. In terms of specific equipment in maths, we would just ask to make sure that students bring calculators and geometry sets, so over and above the things they need for other subjects. And clearly, if there's any concerns with anything to do with the curriculum or with the home learning, make sure you get in touch with the teacher, the class teacher, with me or Miss Aidenwell, the head of maths. And I suppose what we'd like is to try and foster a really positive mindset. So rather than thinking we can't do maths, well, we can't necessarily do it yet, but trying to make sure that we don't, we don't dwell on maybe past traumas we had with our own maths learning, because it's the scheme we've got now is very accessible and it's built around mastery. So I think it's they'll support everyone. I'll give a little booklet afterwards. There's a maths problem on the back. There's prizes to be won, and it's a good example of the kind of problem that you can maybe work through with your students. There's a little link to something that will help you to try and solve it as well if you want to. So if students bring them to the PPA room, there's a prize for the first 5 correct entries. Okay.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Can I just add my thanks to you for turning up this evening to support us, supporting your children. My name is Mr. Watson. I'm Head of Science here at the Radcliffe School. And Year 9 is a very important year for us in science as we transition from the skills and the content that the students are doing in Key Stage 3 into a preparation for starting their GCSEs as well as possible. The students have spent 2 years now looking at the absolute fundamentals of what science is and how science works, and they're starting to get enough scientific knowledge to be able to put ideas together and to deal with more complex ideas. So we start off Year 9 looking at ideas like light and sound, 2 very abstract concepts that they're going to have to use their imagination for rather than necessarily perhaps the physical feeling, touching and seeing what's going on. From there, we move forward into ideas such as genes and inheritance and evolution. These are ideas that they've looked at before, but now we're going to start pulling together different threads, different strands, and hopefully allowing students to see how different ideas combine together to then lead to more complex ideas. The chemical energy, again, is quite an abstract concept that they're going to have to think about chemical reactions rather than just worrying about what's happening with it, but seeing the changes that are going on, not just with the actual substances, but why chemical reactions go forwards, what the difference is in the products, why things are getting hot, why things are getting cold, and starting to think about why instead of just what. Perhaps the only good thing to come out of COVID in the last couple of years is students are now much, much better understanding about ideas of health and disease. So perhaps maybe in the future we don't need to wait quite as long to teach that. And we round it off, or we round the year off actually with some quite different examples of science that we've done before. By this time, the students' literacy skills are very good. And we've very much dealt with science as being a right or wrong set of facts to learn and to understand. But we finish off Key Stage 3 looking at ideas like space and just how big things can be and what's happening out there. We look at ideas like climate change, where every one of us can see us sliding towards something, but none of us can agree on what it is that we're supposed to actually do about it and whether it's worth doing something about it in the first place. And the fact that we are using the Earth's resources at ever increasing rates, and the fact that, again, we need to do something about it, but we can't seem to actually ever quite get round to doing it, and the effects of humans on the planet's diversity and the effects of humans on wildlife. Again, something that we can see happening, but seem very, very slow on taking any real significant action on. You only need to watch any kind of David Attenborough documentary to see that. And this is a very, very different requirement on our students, and we deliberately leave this towards the end so that their knowledge is or their background knowledge that they bring to it can be as rich as possible, and their literacy skills can be as eloquent as possible to allow them to start to really think about what's happening here and to be able to put together the answers and communicate their answers to us. As far as assessment goes, we fall in line with many of our colleagues in maths and English, because obviously we've made the same judgments on what is good practice. Excuse me. Your students will constantly underdo minor informal assessments in lessons. We refer to it as low stakes testing. The aim of that is not for them necessarily to gain 10 out of 10 every time. It's a chance for us as teachers to look at the work that the students are doing, look at what they understand, and go back and teach the bits that we might not have taught very well again. You don't need to really worry about those. What you do need to make sure your students are prepared for are the formal tests that we take at the end of every half term. Students will sit those. We will look at those again with regards to educating ourselves about what the students need going forwards, but they will be used for setting in years 10 and 11. And if there's one thing that I really believe is the better sets or the higher sets you are in 10 and 11 for your GCSEs, it makes your students' lives easier. So there is a real benefit for students to do well at those tests, rather than just to look at them and think they don't matter. There's a definite outcome there. Having said that, all students will be offered the same options irrespective of what set they are in. So we offer an option, perhaps different to maths and English. We do offer an option at the end of year 9 for students to choose to pick what we call separate sciences, or triple science, you might know it as. And that's a very, very popular course. All students that will be offered to all students. It used to be only offered to a very select number of students. It was so popular, we used to run after school exams to force students to sort of prove to us that A, they were capable, and B, that they were willing. We've relaxed our requirements on that. That is available to all students. But again, you want to be making sure that if you are going into taking that much science at Key Stage 4, you maximise your performances at Key Stage 3. And we do expect it, even though we will have 2 classes this year, we still expect it to be oversubscribed, which will give us a difficult decision after options evening. Home learning, again, as you've seen, you've heard a lot about home learning tonight, so we will be setting it fortnightly. What we use in science specifically is an online program called Doddle, in the same way as maths have their software which they think works really well for them. We have Doddle, which works really, really well for us. The only thing I'm going to say to you about it, it's a fairly straightforward system to use. That's one of the reasons why we use it. Most homeworks will be a quiz format, and your children will sit and answer the questions, and at the end of it, it will mark it, which is one of the reasons we like it. The only thing I'm really going to say about it here and now is your child has been given a username, they have been given a login, they've had one for 2 years, and if they can't remember it, email the teacher and they'll be able to reset it for them. All right. That will be done on the 7-day turnaround like everybody else is using. And how parents can support, and I'm fully aware that I'm sat now I'm stood here now trying to tell a group of parents that have turned up on a Tuesday evening to support their children how they can support their children. So apologies here. The main thing I would suggest to you is the Doddle software is incredibly flexible, and it's actually a lot more powerful than just doing homework with. Every single topic that we set a homework for, in fact, every single topic that we run a lesson for, pretty much has a lesson on Doddle and further work that the student can do to practice at home. So if your child comes home and says that there is some science that they're finding difficult, they can go onto Doddle and get some extra help and support there and some extra testing if they want to practice it themselves. They can use that then, even if they use that to come into the teacher and say, look, last night I didn't understand yesterday's lesson. I've done some work on Doddle and I can pull up their results from the night before, see what they've got right, see what they've got wrong, and very, very quickly identify the problems. The idea of this is so that if, it might be science that you're not familiar with, and we understand that, so it's to try and give you some help and support at home so that you're not stuck. But sitting and helping your child with it, I think you'll find most of it comes flooding back fairly quickly as well. Apart from that, I just love the idea of, parents talking and exploring science with their children. As I mentioned earlier, David Attenborough documentaries, and just sitting for an evening or for an hour and watching one of those with a child cannot help but stimulate interest and conversations about science and science in the news. It's there all the time. And if you just have those conversations, then you'll be doing a wonderful job in broadening your children's knowledge. So that's me done. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. That concludes things for the evening in terms of the input. So I'd like to thank all my colleagues who've spoken tonight. But before we go, I'd like to go through some key messages really, and just take the opportunity to emphasise these really important things. First one is about attendance. And, it's obvious, isn't it? But, the more that your child is in school, the more that they're engaging with the learning and the lessons, the more beneficial it's going to be for their education. And we know there are times when, children are genuinely unwell and can't make it into school. However, I would encourage you to encourage your child to come into school every day and to aim for 100%. We do have a really good reward system in schools, so there are half-termly prizes for students with 100%, so there's a material incentive, but just in terms of the impact it can have on their education, that they're not missing any lessons, so please do encourage them to come into school every day. The research shows very clearly there's a strong link between good attendance and good achievement. There's also a lot of research about the impact of effective home learning. And again, everyone who's spoken tonight has talked about the importance of that. So if your child isn't yet in the habit of working at home regularly, then please, there's no time like the present. Do take the opportunity to begin that. So few things that can really help, just finding a space for them to work that's quiet, free from distractions. I know this will be a horrendous suggestion from their point of view, but actually turning the phone off and putting it to one side for an hour, they will survive. They will still be breathing at the end of that hour, but it will really help them to focus on the work. So if you can get, agreements within the household about what they do with the phone when they're doing homework and get those established early, you will genuinely see the benefits as they go through year 9 and then into year 10 and 11. And if you can, I would encourage you to make sure that your child is doing at least an hour a night, and as again, colleagues have said, even if there isn't the specific homework on Show My Homework and Satchel 1, there are lots of other useful, wider things that they can be doing, making sure that they're reading regularly, etc. So, please do try to get your child into those good habits. And then also just to say that we know there will be times when either your child will need some support, they might have a little bit of a wobble, they might be finding school difficult, or you might have some concerns about things that that we're doing, that we're providing. So please do get in touch as early as possible, because we do want to, if there are any issues, we do want to resolve them as quickly and effectively as we can. So as has already been mentioned, you can email your child's subject teachers or the head of subject if if you've got a specific curriculum question, and this is anything general, then the first port of call would be your child's PLG. I'm sure you all know who that person is. Miss Hunt, as year manager, again, will always be happy to speak to you. And then we do have other members of the senior team who are attached to the year group. So Miss Taylor and Miss Parkinson are the members of SLMT who have specific support roles for year 9 as well. So there's lots of people you can contact. If you've got any concerns, do get in touch. We'll be more than happy to resolve them. Okay, so that is everything for this evening. Thanks once again for coming. It's really great to see you and, to see that you're supporting your child by being here. Have a safe journey home. Thank you.